You're listening to the Mind Over Finger podcast, episode number 37, the second of 5 shows covering the Fischoff experience.
Welcome to the Mind Over Finger podcast, discussions on mindful music making, efficient practice, and building a purposeful career. And now, your host, Dr. Renee Paul Gauthier.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great day wherever this podcast finds you. Yesterday, we got to meet some of the musicians participating in this year's Fischoff competition, and today you'll get to meet the team of incredibly supportive, loving, and dedicated people that are essential in making all of this magic happen. There are a lot of elements that need to come together to help young musicians be successful in the competition. It's a long, thoughtful, and serious process that the groups go through to prepare for Fischoff. And I was so happy to see fellow Chicago friend Rodolfo Vieira on my first day at Fischoff. Rodolfo teaches at the Music Institute of Chicago's Academy, and he's guided many groups through this process, and many of his students are winners here at Fischoff. This year, he brought the Zina and Fierro quartets with him, and here's what he shared with me. Rodolfo Vieira, I'm so happy to speak with you today because, first of all, we had one of our past guests on the podcast who was mentioning that you were her coach when she came here at Fischoff, so it's not your first experience here at Fischoff. And I also know from several of your past students how much they appreciate working with you and how well they do in competition. So it's really great to speak with you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I've known you for quite some time, and I'm very glad this is one of the first times we get to go in depth into some of these things. So yes, I've been very lucky to have extremely talented students over the past few years. They all are super hardworking, and I think it shows off when they go to competitions. We have been super lucky for the last few years that they do really well. So yeah.
You just said hardworking. What in your mind is maybe there's no perfect recipe for success in competition, but what are some key ingredients that you think students should have?
That's a really good question. If you really think about it, an arts competition is really almost a ridiculous concept because you're trying to get to the point where you can showcase something and hopefully someone will really like it. So it goes really down to understanding what are the mechanics or things that people react to, and by reacting to, like, your audience, your judges, everything else. So getting a knack for what are the things that you want to bet on early on and understanding how to bring that out from every single context that you have, be a group, be a piece, etc., is a really key thing. So in a way, putting it together, figuring out what you want to deliver early on is super important for this. Then hard work comes as the next step. You do need to work extremely hard, and all these students that they're, doing very well in competitions, it all comes at a huge price. They know how to practice. They know a lot of tricks and techniques to not have to go through the linear process of just practicing and improvement over time in a more linear way, but actually do these jumps. So every time there's a new concept or a new idea, that you can do something much faster right away instead of having to slave away for 2-3 weeks. This is what I try to impart on their side.
This is great advice. So what do you see happening in the group when, you start with them at the beginning of the year? Maybe they don't know each other really well. What kind of things do you see in this process of getting to know each other, both as people and as musicians?
It's an amazing process. I mean, any teacher knows the process. You start with some raw material. You have raw talent, you have group dynamics that sometimes work in favor of the group, and other times there is a lot of tension. And that's not always a bad thing. That turns out to be one of the best things in a group. If you have tension, it means you have different personalities, you have different energy levels. And if you can manage and make them flow towards what you really want them to do with that turns out to be super exciting. But it's kind of an interesting idea, too. Yeah, so in other words, getting a group of students from the beginning, they come in with very raw material. They are very good players, very talented. They've been working really hard to get to this point. Props to all of the teachers. They have been doing a phenomenal work. So I get to do a little bit of this amazing, working in this space, which is take all that talent, combine that, try to align one of the most unique things we can do, which is deliver outstanding performances and figuring out how can we get to that with the talent we have. Each user has their own talent profile, and you have to understand how to connect this with other students in the group, get group dynamics to really work well. And by dynamics, this is not musical dynamics, this is actually personality dynamics, because this will encourage a lot of great things to come out if you do it right. So when you put this all together, you start seeing this evolution almost. You see a lot of work that happens because the students learn a new concept, they start doing that, and sometimes students don't really know how to do something, so you can impart this knowledge on them and show them how it's done. What is really awesome is when they take that and they make it their own and they start really delivering with that. They take it to town, they make all this amazing creative work on top of that. Once the group starts doing that, we can layer more complex concepts. And after a certain number of cycles doing this, you get to the point where the group comes back with amazing material. At that point, all you got to do is just highlight the areas that they need to think about, because they already have engine to process all that information, and then they can feed into the creative sides and come up with really awesome solutions.
It's very specific to the people you're working with. It's not a one-size-fits-all process.
Not at all. Every year, I have to do basically a whole new group or multiple groups of students, and it's always a different challenge. You never know who you're going to get ahead of time. What I learned to do, in a way, was to everyone wants to do well, and you know what are the drivers for most people. Being able to understand the talent profile is kind of the key, because if you know what drives someone, you can use that and make them connect and basically leverage each other in a way that you wouldn't do otherwise. At that point, you can start layering things in a way that you see a fit for that, and then you can start pushing students towards outside of their comfort zone sometimes, and once they see the value for that, they will jump on that. So that's kind of a nice thing when you see that whole process working. It's very rewarding for them. And I think the key thing is once you see them, they have this light bulb moment. Something goes off in their mind, like, oh, I know how to do this. This is my new thing. I'm going to explore this whole thing as a group. And they come back with something new. That's super rewarding for them, first of all, and for me too, because this is a good sign that they're sounding really good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, I spoke with Scott Linder, coach of the Fab Five Brass Quintet from the Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra. He talked to me about the experience of witnessing his groups evolve together throughout the year, what he encourages them to develop throughout the process, and the new opportunities that come with young winds and brass players with having separate categories in the junior division. Would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Scott Linder. I'm the tubist with Gaudete Brass, amongst the coach for the Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra brass groups.
You were also someone that was active in doing the preliminary rounds for the competition.
Yeah, I was one of the judges for the senior winds and brass division of Fischoff to watch the tapes to pick the 12 finalists to come here today.
How does it feel to come here and listen to the group that you've coached?
Well, I'm really excited. I've competed at Fischoff before, and I've had other groups, so I think I'm actually more nervous as a coach than I was when I was a performer, just to, and also really excited for these kids to have this opportunity to play in a great space and to be able to share music at a, sort of more competitive level to see what they have for, their future lives in music, to sort of set that tone early that this is what this is about, at least on the level of music making. So,
how does it feel as a coach to see these kids start the beginning of the year, see how they evolve throughout the year?
I think what's most incredible for me, actually, is to see the friendships made throughout the year. They started off, they kind of knew each other, but now they're all like 5 best friends in Chicago from different parts of the city or the suburbs, come together and make music every Sunday, and see them hanging out outside of brass quintet rehearsal, and the camaraderie it forms, I think, is really incredible. Also, they sound a lot better now than they did in October. So.
What kind of things do you work with groups when you coach a chamber ensemble through a process to prepare for a competition like Fischoff?
For me, the biggest thing is always to be saying something when they're playing. No one's going to play flawlessly this weekend, but the people who walk out on the stage and have something to offer, something to say is most important, and to make sure that they're actually communicating their ideas versus thinking that these ideas and then not actually saying them through their instrument. So we spend most of our time, really sort of cultivating that idea and knowing as a group what they want to say.
one more question. So you're telling me that this is the first year that the junior division is split between the brass and the strings. So what does that do for the participants?
So in the years past, the junior division was always one big category. So young brass groups were competing against young string groups. And, it was always at a disadvantage for the brass groups because they had been starting their instrument maybe 5-6 years ago, where string players have been playing since they were little small children. And so this year, having this opportunity for these students to be, in a sense, a fair competition amongst their equal peers of the winds and brass, kind of, I think, plants the seed for future growth in chamber music, to have a reason to come here and to enter and to compete, knowing that they can walk out with a chance to win. Because when they were competing against a string quartet, let's say brass quintet, the string quartet has wonderful music like Shostakovich string quartets and Brahms string quartets, and the brass quintet has Ewald and maybe stops there. We were just at such a disadvantage. And so with the new Carmen, the new executive director, to split the junior division like the senior division is, I think is such a wonderful opportunity that kids can come and compete amongst their peers and peer repertoire and have the opportunity to walk out feeling excited about themselves, or instead of knowing that, well, we're not going to make the finals because we're not a string quartet.
Mm-hmm. This is great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I met with Joseph Maley from the San Francisco Conservatory Pre-College and coach of the Bach Trio, competitors in the junior division. Joseph was himself a winner here at Fischoff. His quartet, the Telegraph Quartet, won the 2014 Grand Prize, and here he elaborates on effective rehearsal techniques and mindsets. I'm with Joseph Maley from the San Francisco Conservatory, and you're a coach for one of the groups?
Yeah. One of the groups, the Bach Trio, from San Francisco Pre-College.
And I heard them play, and they played beautifully. One thing I am curious to hear is your view on what you feel like are very effective rehearsal techniques for chamber music groups, especially these junior groups that tend to be together for no more than 1 or 2, only a few years. So it's kind of a journey for them to get them from point zero to the level of preparation that you need for an event for Fischoff. What are some ways that you like to work with groups?
Well, I'm not sure I can give much information, specifically rehearsal techniques, but the way I do work with them is they're already such advanced players when they come and when they're capable of competing at Fischoff. So actually a big part of it is for me is getting them to kind of really take apart the work the piece that they're working on, and kind of dissect it and understand what makes it tick. Because the one thing that I do tell my students a lot of times is it's very easy to look at the music and think of it as an instruction booklet. But for me, that's not what it is. It's a bunch of clues. Mm-hmm. And it's their job to look within the harmony, within the phrase structure, within the shape of the phrase, and from there to kind of pull out for them what the meaning, what the emotional meaning of the music is. So, and then things like forte, piano, articulations, all these things that are so important that the composer gave us, which are clues to understanding what they want to express, comes from maybe a more inward place, and not just, this is what forte means. It means this much louder than that. Mm-hmm. So that's a big thing that I try to encourage in all my groups and these guys as well. So it's about, it's about kind of trying to almost like think like a composer. And think of the instructions not from the instrumentalists in, but kind of outward from the inside elements of the music. Mm-hmm.
I love this point of view. This is so great. And what are some ways that you think young musicians can go deeper into all of this knowledge that you just mentioned?
Well, understanding kind of basic harmonic structures is a big part, and they get that. A lot of kids have the advantage of getting that in their pre-college classes. They're what we call musicianship in San Francisco, but theory, essentially. I think, though, besides that, you don't have to have that kind of thing, that intellectual necessarily. Singing it is such a big part, I think, kind of connecting with their original instrument, even if they don't feel confident about their voice or anything. That's not the point. It's like being able to kind of act it out or sing it out the way that they hear it. That's a big part for me, because we're always so fixated, and for good reason, on technique and how to manipulate the kind of acrobatic elements of our instruments, and we should be interested in that. But when they connect with that inner part, that more, kind of raw, natural music part, and that's a big part. So for me, and it's connected with the voice or with their own movement, with how they dramatize. Because if done correctly, that movement will kind of, music is physical, like Robert Mann said, right?
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So, yeah, I should tell you, I was fortunate enough in 2014 to be the grand prize winner in the Telegraph Quartet.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's really fun for me to come back here and kind of relive the experience with these kids. And while it's always a bummer to, not advance, it really was wonderful to see what Fischoff does for everybody, all the contestants, not just the people who make it through. I mean, the kids got to work with Jeffrey Ziegler today, the cellist, the junior division cellist, juror. And, he's from Fremont, California, and our violinist is from Fremont, California. So they got, it was nice for them to not only get his feedback directly, and in a very positive way through a master class. I think that's just such a wonderful thing about this place. And it's wonderful for me to come back and see that side of it, because I was in the senior division and it was different that way, but still incredibly, welcoming.
It's so true what you're saying. Like, I feel like at Fischoff, everybody walks away a winner because there's so much to be gained just by being here and taking in all of the amazing inspiration from the jurors and the other performers, but also all of the new friendships and all of this really wonderful family. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. Yeah. Well, it was my pleasure. Thanks.
The last coach I spoke with here, on the record that is Tom Schneider from the Barrett School of Music and coach of the Precipice Saxophone Quartet. He and I spoke about what groups need to enjoy playing together and be successful in the chamber music field. I'm with Tom Schneider from the Barrett School, and you guys just learned that you're making it to the semifinal. Can you tell us a little bit what that means for you as a coach?
Well, it's just nice to see all their hard work this year rewarded. These kids are really incredible. They've been practicing their instruments diligently for years, both as soloists and as chamber musicians. And, I always tell them these things aren't so much about the results. It's about really the preparation going into the competition and the experience of the competition itself, performing on a high level, surrounded by peers from all over the country and even today the world, in fact. So, it's really nice to see that, all this work is paying off for them and people are recognizing their hard work.
What do you feel are some qualities that young musicians need to be successful in the chamber music group? And I don't mean successful in terms of winning a competition, but just to make the best out of the experience.
Yeah, well, I think there's a number of things. I mean, I think we talk a lot about listening. And that goes in many different ways. Of course, listening within their group, but I think listening also to other people. We talk about how listening really needs to be part of their practice sessions, right? For anything from style to vibrato to techniques. But I think also listening in terms of getting to know who are the other people that are around you, who are the other people that are your age also doing what you're doing. So I think that's maybe sometimes an undervalued quality to have, or an undervalued thing to work on for young groups especially.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you so much.
I was really happy to meet with Barrett Teague, who's not only the parent of a participant here at Fischoff, his son Miles plays horn in the Fab Five brass quintet you heard yesterday, but also a brilliant music educator. He is the Fine Arts Department chair at Downers Grove North High School near Chicago and past state president of the Illinois Music Education Association. And I was really curious to hear about his perspective. Here he tells me about negotiating the demands of preparing for an event such as the Fischoff and the growth he sees in young artists participating in musical activities of this scope. Barrett Teague, I'm so happy to find you here because you're not only the parent of a participant in the competition, but you're also someone who's so involved in music education. You're chair of the Fine Arts Department at Downers Grove, but you were also the president of ILMEA for many years. So you have a lot of knowledge in what it takes to prepare as a participant for an event like this, and you have the role of parent and educator. So you're kind of a one-stop shop. It's perfect. Can you tell us a little bit what it feels like to watch your child perform in a competition like this?
Oh, yeah. It's really rewarding to just see all these students feel like they're bringing all their hard work to fruition. But yeah, you're right. I wear a couple of different hats here. I've got the music educator hat, but today I'm wearing the dad hat. And so, of course, we're really proud to see all their hard work starting to pay off in moments like this.
What are the challenges that you see for, we can call them kids, I guess, kids that age negotiate the demands of maintaining such a high level of artistic depth and negotiating with classes and long commutes? Right. What are some of those challenges that they have to face?
Well, I think you just tapped on into a few of those things. They're logistical challenges. I mean, all five of the kids in this particular quintet are incredibly dedicated to their music, but sometimes it's the logistics of how do we get together. We all live in disparate communities. We're all trying to come together. They're doing long commutes at weird hours of the night. In the last couple of weeks, they've been all driving into the city to meet. Sometimes at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night when they could find the moments to come together. I think that one of the things I'm the most proud of, though, is that they're even coming together now outside the regular coachings that they would do with their main mentor in this brass quintet, Scott Linder. But even when he's not available, they're finding time and places to come together and practice just because they love the music so much. So I think the challenges are mostly logistic. And then also, of course, a lot of these kids, they would just love to be doing music 25 hours a day. But they've got to balance their regular schoolwork, their AP classes, all of those things that are pulling on them in a lot of different directions.
Mm-hmm. And what do you see coming out of those kids after working together for a whole year? What kind of growth do you see in them?
Well, I can speak to this from my own son, who actually also happens to be a horn player at my school where I teach. So I'm his music teacher, and I'm his dad, and then I'm here, watching as the parent here. But what I see in my son, Miles, is someone who's developing confidence and leadership in his own playing, and then looking for ways to give back to his own program when he comes back to his own school. And I think these kinds of experiences, I'm sure for all the players that come down here in these chamber groups, that when they go back to their own communities, hopefully they become better musical leaders themselves.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
While here, I had some wonderful interactions with many incredible parents, and I fell in love with the Vieira parents. You heard from their children in yesterday's show, and you'll see that parents often form bonds just as strong as the musicians. They talked to us about how it feels to be a Fischoff parent, the transformation they see in their children through this experience, the many sacrifices parents have to make, as well as the wonderful friendships and the strong bonds that are created with other parents. And also they talk about what the young musicians learn from rehearsing so intensively and preparing for an event like Fischoff. Could you tell us the name of your child and the group that she plays in?
Isabella Brown, and she's playing in the Fierro String Quartet from the Music Institute of Chicago Academy.
And how does it feel to be at Fischoff as a mom?
It's always exciting. My boys have done Fischoff too in the past, and it's something that the groups work really hard at to get enough repertoire and to get it at the level they need to be here. And they're always so excited to come and make music with their friends. And I think that that's the best part of all, is that they can come and it's like sort of a culmination of all of their hard work and a time for them to sort of celebrate their accomplishments of the year.
And sometimes in events like this, we tend to forget how much sacrifices the parents make for that. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? I know that we're happy to do those sacrifices, but it's a lot of work for the parents as well. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, there's the driving the kids to lessons, to academy, to the actual competition, but it's all really a lot of fun and really exciting. I can't imagine not. And my friend here is letting me remember that we've become parents in this particular quartet have become really, really good friends. And we've had a blast together, and we're actually like a little more sad than maybe even the kids that the year is almost over. We're talking about reunions already. So I think we gain, I guess my whole point is that we gain a lot out of this, probably more than we sacrifice, because it is a lot of fun to be part of the process, to see your kids making music with other kids, with their friends, and having a great time is really so gratifying. And then just the friendships that you form with the other parents and the other people in the same situation that you are in. Similarly, in previous years, I've become really close with a lot of the kids my kids have played with, and it's a really nice process.
A lot of enrichment for everybody.
We come from Ann Arbor, Michigan, so we drive every weekend, so it's to make the commitment and also to coordinate the schedule of the quartet to the time of when you do all the rehearsals and stuff like that. So
That's a lot of logistics.
yes.
So I would like for someone to talk to me a little bit about the kind of transformation they see in their child when the child is doing chamber music. Maybe I can ask all three of you.
Transformation. I mean, it's a different skill set to play chamber music rather than to be your own performer and to be on the stage alone. In some ways, it may be a little less intimidating to play in a group rather than to be out there by yourself. But it takes different skills of like cooperating with other people and making sure that everybody is heard the same way, and or whenever someone needs to be heard more and someone needs to be heard less. So it's a lot of give and take. This group has worked very well together to make the best sound that they can make. So I think that's very important. It's a great transformation. My son had been in different groups in the past, and they all bring similar kind of experience. This year has been the peak of his experience, I think, with this being with the group for so long, for a full year, and working very diligently on few pieces of music and making them as best as you can make them. So.
And can you tell us the name of your son and his instrument?
My son's name is Alon Hayut, and he plays the cello.
Very beautifully. This is fantastic. We were just talking about the fact that your daughter is here for the second time, and the difference that gathering this experience from multiple performances does to a young musician. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yes. With second year around, and of course with the academy program that she is in, every year they get to put into a different group and they get to play with different students. Mm-hmm. And that's such a wonderful experience because regardless, they have to learn how to work with different people under any circumstances. And I think this is such a growing part of the process in music. It really is. It teaches you, regardless the situation, regardless the circumstances, you learn how to subside your personal feeling if it's not a match. But just do it for the purity of the music making. Mm-hmm. And that's so important for a youngster to learn. It's to understand what does that mean. Do it for the pure of the music making, mm-hmm. and not put into personal feeling if that situation didn't come. Mm-hmm. Great.
These are such great skills to learn that all the kids performing here will carry with them for the rest of their lives.
I think so, especially I think at this age, the high school age, they are still, there's so much that they have to learn. There's so much they needed to learn besides the repertoire. And the other part is really a communication skill, personal skill. And this is such a crucial time for them to learn. It's a process. Mm-hmm. It's not going to, you're not going to have it in 1 year. You're not going to have 2 years. It's a continuously process, and the more you do it, hopefully the better you will be at knowing how to deal with it. And it's that, I believe that part of the communication is just as important as the music making.
This is so great. Thank you so much. I also had the chance to sit down with the Daj Dad himself, Scott Linder, who gave me a wonderful account of what it entails and what it means to watch and support your child go through an experience as wonderful as making music with friends in a dedicated way and participate in an event like Fischoff. I'm speaking with Scott Linder, who's a Daj Dad, I guess I can say.
Daj Dad, yeah.
Daj Dad.
Mm-hmm.
I really have established kind of a connection with that quartet because they're the first group that I met when I arrived here on Thursday evening, and it was so great to hear them perform. And it's been great to see that they came with the whole team as well, and the coach, both coaches and yourself. You guys have pins made. I just love seeing all of this support, and it's a really, it takes a village.
It takes a village, and every village needs an idiot. I drive a lot of the events, but pretty much all of the parents go to all of the events, and they go to 3 or 4 competitions per year, and we just have such a great time traveling together, and there's a lot of camaraderie, a lot of support. I couldn't be prouder of the family unit that we are.
Mm-hmm. And what are kinds of sacrifices that you as a person have to make? I've talked with other parents about the sacrifices that their kids have to do to come to these events in terms of working really hard and being dedicated and going to rehearsal. But for you, that also, and you and all the parents, that represents a lot of sacrifices, which I know we're happy to make, but could you give us an example?
Well, I think that mainly it requires being really flexible with each other's schedules. There are, for example, more often than not, they'll plan a 2-hour rehearsal and parents will arrive at the destination to pick up a kid, but you don't know when you come. You may end up sitting in the parking lot another hour and a half, sometimes even 2 more hours. And if you have something else to do, you really better think, you may not be able to. You may just have to chill out in the parking lot, get some work done. I always bring papers to grade or things to work on in the car because I just don't know when I'll really be getting out of there. Mm-hmm. But it's really not much of a sacrifice, and once we get used to it, we just know that's the way it's going to be, and everyone's on board with it. And sometimes it ends up being that a parent has to go, and one parent takes that kid home or something like that. Mm-hmm. That happens a lot, but everyone's willing, everyone throws in.
Yeah, it's like an investment in time.
Huge investment in time for everyone. But the kids work so hard, and win or lose, whatever happens with the season, I think these skills that the kids learn, setting goals, working so hard, and loving their work, most importantly, right? I always tell my daughter, one thing, no matter what you do in life, make sure that you love doing it. Good things will follow. The money will take care of itself, but if you just love the work you do, you're destined to be a happy person in all regards, in your relationships and your friendships, your family, all of the above. So I think, I like to think that our community, our Daj family, has those values, and we support each other in that regard.
Thank you so much. Fischoff sees multiple organizations return year after year, and strong relationships are created through this experience. These organizations provide the infrastructure that young, budding musical talents need to blossom. They provide rehearsal space, coaches, and performance opportunities. And as you'll hear in this touching conversation with Alan Dennis from the Midwest Young Artists Conservatory, they care deeply about their students. Alan Dennis, you're with the Midwest Young Artists Conservatory.
In Highland Park, yep, and Highwood, yep.
One thing I can say with MYAC is that it has many groups at Fischoff, and it has produced many winners. But also from, being a Chicago local, I get to see the students, I get to see what the organization does for them. So can you please tell us a little bit more about what the organization does and the kind of infrastructure it offers to really allow for all these wonderful talents to blossom?
Well, our purpose, our mission is to build a home with the power of music to enrich the lives of our students and their community. So it's really not about music as an end result. It's about building a home where students feel an environment they can grow in and they can be whatever they want to do. This is the first year ever we didn't get anybody in the semifinals. But that's okay because our focus is not to win. We try, but our focus is to give them the support to be able to stretch themselves and try to do way more than what they think they can do, because it's only in trying to reach that goal that they realize who they really are. So we try to emphasize using music to find out who you are inside yourself and find your value system of loyalty, responsibility, being who you are that make you a special person.
And what do you feel like chamber music bring to these kids?
Yeah, I think they relate to all our programs because we have like 9 orchestras and we have 65 chamber groups and we have 5 choirs and we have a whole bunch of jazz programs. But I think what chamber music brings in is within a small group, within a unit that you know and trust, and people you see every week one-on-one, gives you the chance to lead, to follow, or to go along with. Mm-hmm. So it gives you the skills necessary to get along in life. You're not always going to be able to say to everybody around you, here's what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. You're never going to hopefully never be in a situation where you always go, yes, sir, whatever you want me to do. And hopefully you're going to have a lot of times when you're saying, well, let's work together on that. So I think that having those options to learn how to do that musically gives you the confidence to do that personally.
It's such a great program. Thank you for speaking with me today.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to tell you, Fischoff has meant so much to me. It's 32 years I've been coming here with my own children. What great students did I have to see grow up and do great things. We have students that are heading up Yale's research into cancer. We have great students that are in great orchestras. But being here helped bring us closer together and gave us a goal to work for.
Thank you. I also had the chance to meet with the wonderful Deborah Price, Artistic Director of Chamber Music Connection in Worthington, Ohio, and coach of the Dosh Quartet, which you met yesterday. Chamber Music Connection is a phenomenal program, and hearing Deborah talk about it blew my mind. It's the kind of organization I wish would pop up all over America. Here's Deborah telling me about the program, her wonderful students, and how she guides young artists to the highest levels. I have with me Deborah Price, who runs a fantastic program out of Worthington, Ohio, and I'd love to hear a little bit about it.
Yeah, I'd love to share it. It's called the Chamber Music Connection, and we were founded in 1992. I had a friend who was the original violist of the Cavani String Quartet, and her mom was a teacher up in the Delaware, Ohio, which is about 20 miles north of Columbus. And she came to do a little master class for some of my students, and she said, hey, my mom always wanted to start a chamber music program. Do you think you would do that? And I was like, sure, why not? I mean, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I also didn't know I was pregnant. And so my very first program, I was 9 months pregnant with my son, who's now a cellist, and actually just got named the cellist with the Cavani String Quartet. So it's gone full circle, completely full circle. And there were a few things that I wanted to do, and the main one that was different than other programs is it's all-inclusive. You do not have to audition. We never audition. People just register, and then I group them based on what maybe some of the information they give me, like their name, their age, their I don't use their name, but their age, their instrument, their how long they've been studying. They give a basic assessment of their abilities, and then I just group them all together, and I've been doing that for 28 years. In the 28 years, we've literally worked with hundreds upon hundreds of students, and because each semester I have between 70 and 100 students, so put that times 27 years. Yeah, okay, maybe we're in the thousands by now, but
wow.
I think I've only had to change 4 or 5 students in that entire time where the grouping wasn't quite as maybe balanced as it could be. And we work on the basic fundamentals of playing chamber music together with teamwork and communication, and they have a team of coaches, so there's about 20 to 40 faculty and guest artists in any given semester. So I'm not exclusive to being their only coach, and they have, so like for instance, a violinist is going to have a different perspective than a cellist, than the pianist, than the violist, than maybe a wind player or a harpist or a vocalist, and so I think it's good for the group to hear it from different perspectives. And then ultimately they make the decision, and they become very flexible, very flexible at taking an idea from someone and working on it with themselves. And it's just so much fun to watch a group become more creative on their own and have this great experience with those around them. And they've really gotten to a point where I feel like I'm almost just riding a wave with them. Like everybody's just, I'm like, I don't even know if I'm the conduit. I think it's just like I actually just enjoy seeing the students encourage other students to play chamber music, and students who maybe didn't know they liked the violin that much, including one of the violinists is in a string quartet that he just performed in the semifinals at Fischoff. He has come full circle and just is all in, and wasn't even sure he wanted to keep playing the violin until he got into chamber music. So it's awesome to see that kind of experience happen, and I can't even articulate how cool it is to be part of it all.
And what kind of transformation do you see in kids through chamber music?
Just really watching, first of all, playing-wise. Some people are like, oh, this kid's maybe doesn't have the ability or something. And I watch kids who some people don't think have ability develop an amazing ability and become very strong players, strong leaders, very empathetic people. I usually when we talk about chamber music and what it means to us in orientation and then throughout our processes through study, and you see these 7-8-year-old kids who are really like playing basic quarter notes and they're doing chamber music, and watching them interact and be able to talk with each other and laugh, and say one of the kids walked out, I think she's 9 years old, out of the first session 2 weeks ago. And I was behind it. My parents, some of the parents and some of my interns had said to me, "Did you hear that little girl?" And I'm like, "No." They said, "It's the best thing ever." I was like, her first chamber music experience. She's 9. And so watching these kids realize that they have a voice, and then some of these kids who maybe didn't think they had ability, all of a sudden, like, wait a second, I have ability. And watching also those kids who, love what they do, but maybe don't really understand how deeply involved they can get into the music, and how, people think sometimes, oh, if I play the same quarter note, or, I have 12 measures of quarter notes, it's going to be boring. And they're like, can't be boring. I've got so much to think about. And these quarter notes are directing the sound, or whole notes have this color that we layer a foundation for. I mean, they just get so deeply invested in what they're doing. And that's pretty impressive for, teenager, even for an adult.
Yes. And from what I hear, you've brought several very successful groups here at Fischoff. This year you're with the Dodge Quartet, whom I've had the chance to hear twice already and speak with a few times. What do you think are some of the elements that can really help a group reach higher levels? What sort of rehearsal techniques or maybe approaches that could help a group reach the higher level of playing?
I do have a pretty involved step process of group development, and I work with the students. There's a group of fellowship students who are high school students, almost like a graduate assistantship program that would be in a college level or graduate level, that they're working with me in that respect to learn the pedagogy, because pedagogy in chamber music doesn't really exist very much, And so I've spent 27 years developing a pedagogy. And so we have very specific exercises, and I'm actually starting a series of videos to share these exercises, like 1 minute to 3 minute videos that will be available for people to watch or share with a group that they're, in a public school or amateurs or other teachers. Some of the, just to give us some basic ideas, we work with movement and cueing and improvisation. So the way the students will develop it, a sense of how to cue and how to communicate is without their music, without their stands, and just create like a word of the day on their instrument or something on their instrument, some kind of sound. And then they cue each other and they work with that. They do dynamics and they start to understand just the basics of how to breathe and show something to somebody. And then from there we do learning a piece of music. I'm not an advocate of just sit down and read unless you want to have a reading party. That's a totally different thing. Reading party is a totally different thing. So we have a process of deconstructing the piece and then reconstructing the piece, from doing the skeleton of it, maybe downbeats only, last beat to first beat, or last note to first note of a measure, do a lot of score study, and telling stories. We get artwork, like sometimes they paint, sometimes they do just literally write stories out to go along with a piece. And I'm very influenced also by the Cleveland Quartet and the Cavani Quartet and some of their processes and that we've grown up together doing. And the Cavani and I have known each other since the mid-'80s. And so we share a lot of our ideas. And the thing with the chamber music pedagogy is just, it's so important to share with others so that they can also develop those techniques, whether you're going to compete or just have a great time playing with friends. And I think the other big thing, besides the pedagogy and the rehearsing, is the support of the families. When you got high school students or middle school students or elementary school students, the parents' support is absolutely 100% necessary. And I have been so lucky to have incredible parental support, and beyond that, teacher support. Because if the teacher doesn't support it, it's hard. And when you've got kids who want to do something so passionately, I don't understand how anybody can't support it anyway. And I don't mean financially; I mean just time-wise, or just that there's value in it. And most people, I think, that I am lucky enough to be around really understand the value of chamber music and what it does for all of us as musicians and as listeners.
Would you please share with us also where we can find you?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have the Chamber Music Connection is cmconnection.org. It's our website. And then we have a Facebook page. It's the CM Connection. There's also a page called Chamber Music Connection Alumni, because we have alumni now literally all over the world. And we're on Instagram as well, and Snapchat and things like that. So
that sounds good.
They can find us.
I encourage everyone to look you up.
Thank you.
Deborah, I think that this is really important, the work that you're doing. And please keep us posted when those videos come out, because I feel like this is of tremendous value to all of us. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Of course, not surprisingly, universities and conservatories are heavily represented here. And I sat down with C and Darren Lee from the Cleveland Institute of Music to discuss competition preparation and how things work at CIM. I'm with C and Darren Lee, who's the chamber music coordinator and faculty at the Cleveland Institute of Music. And you guys have many groups here this year. And I'd love to hear about the chamber music program at CIM, first of all. And maybe get into a little bit of the kind of qualities you feel like makes student successful in the chamber music program.
Okay, so for CIM, we basically encourage all the students, to participate in chamber music, and we have wonderful faculty. So it's worth mentioning we have two very special programs, the Advanced String Quartet program and the Advanced Piano Trio program. So at Fischoff, both of our programs actually have representative, in the competition. So one is the Avanzari Quartet Avanzari, that's from the ASQ we called, and also Cleveland Trio from the APTP. And for other students, we offer about a minimum of 10 hours coaching per semester. Also, we have the wonderful Young Artist program at CIM. And we have this year 2 wonderful string quartets. Actually, no, it's 1 string quartet and 1 piano trio participating, and they're both in the semifinals right now.
That sounds great. And what do you see going into the preparation for this competition?
First of all, I mean, they need to have enthusiasm and passion, and they have to they need to feel like they want to do it. And as a teacher, we don't force any students to enter competitions. So the students are very enthusiastic, and they express their interest at first. Then we take a look at the repertoire requirements and start planning, for the whole year or the semester in order to be able to enter the competition. So, of course, things like Fischoff and Coltman competitions, and there are many other competitions, out there. So we try to basically find common repertoire that, pieces that they can use for all those competitions that, they are doing. So sometimes, it's very easy to find pieces that, okay, for example, a Beethoven quartet, could work, for all the competitions, but some other competitions might ask for something that is very specific. So then we have to learn pieces like that, pieces written for the competitions, or they just require something that that is unusual. So we put everything together. And the kids, they work very hard, individually and as a group. So they take their, first, they take their part and listen to many recordings, studying the score, which I think is really important for chamber music. So, you have to know beyond, the line you have. So, and also they write in cues and other people's part in their own part. So then, when they play together, they know what to look for. And things like that, that's the, I think that's pretty much the first step that we do. Then after that, they get together and rehearse, and that's when the coaching starts. So, like I said, each group gets at least 10 hours of coaching. Then, of course, for competitions, many of our teachers, offer, extra coachings and extra times, just for to help them get ready for the competition.
There's so many logistics going into participating in competitions like this that you mentioned, and that oftentimes we don't think about when we're considering entering a competition like this. Just as you said, there's, availabilities, first of all, and all of the requirements in terms of repertoire, and it's something that can be so easily overlooked. Many things to line up.
Yeah, and also the thing is, in terms of looking for repertoire, you have to, I think, also you want to take a look at what they have done and what's needed. I think entering competitions, it's a great thing, but also you want to think about their musical growth, so what repertoire is appropriate, and, what each player can get out of, learning, let's say, a different piece. So, things like that. I think competitions, when you have the right approach, a very healthy approach to competitions, I think they can be really, really wonderful and beneficial. So I tell all my students, this is a great performing opportunity, and also you get to travel together, and you make music together, and usually in a different place, now your hometown. And also because competition, we all know the pressure, is there. And everybody, wants to do their best. Everybody wants to win. So because of that motivation, I think really inspires all the students to give their best and to work as hard as they can. So the thing is, the competitions, really there are just wonderful performing opportunities, and if students go there and play their heart out, give everything they have, and there's no regret whatsoever.
Thank you so much. Finally, I sat down with the one and only Tom Rosenberg, artistic director here at Fischoff. He tells us about the story behind the competition, the impact it has, and he muses on competitions and the essence of what this is all about. I'm sitting with Tom Rosenberg, who's the artistic director of the Fischoff competition. Thank you so much for giving some time to speak with me.
Glad to be here.
Tom, I would like to know a little bit about Fischoff, its history and its mission.
Okay. I'm not even sure what we're 46th. Okay, so whatever year that would make it, there is a person here in town. He ran a furniture business. His name was Joe Fischoff. He loved chamber music. He was an amateur violist. He was in the first graduating class of Curtis, whenever that was. Anyway, he and a bunch of his friends had a sight reading quartet. They read chamber music every night. And it was at a time when, there was very little collegiate chamber music and really almost no high school chamber music going on or pre-college. And they decided to start a competition. It was very small, but it was one of the only chamber music competitions around. There was one in California called the Coleman. But anyway, they started it, and I had heard of it when I was in college, but it was so small that we decided not to go. And then shortly thereafter, I was in a quartet that won the Cleveland Quartet competition, and we were on a fast track, and we got a job here in South Bend at Indiana University. And the first thing that happened was he called me. And we had already been in a number of international competitions, and some of them were wonderful experiences, and some of them weren't. And some of them we did great, so we had a wonderful experience, but people who didn't win had horrible experiences. So I brought a lot of experience in with me, and immediately they started asking me to help. And I said, well, if you had a good people on your jury, maybe people would come and all that kind of stuff. And started coming up with ideas on how to make it happen better, or different at least, and it took off. So now I've been doing it for 39 years, which is terrifying.
And all I hear from people is how well run this organization is. So,
well, it's not just me. Believe me, I'm a disorganized mess. But there's an incredible team of people who are part of this. They're like family, or we're very close friends. Most of us no longer even live here. We come back to put this thing together, and have been. I'm 39 years, Carrie's 24, Amanda and Tessa, they're like 20-some years. So we have a lot of experience together. We all have different strengths. We all have good senses of humor. And we know who can do what and who shouldn't. Like they're telling me all the time, Tom, get out of here, don't do this. But my job is, to make sure we have great jurors. All the rules and regulations are designed around musicians. So my two. Oh, I missed a really important part of the deal. Those guys all were music educators, and so they wanted it to be different and an educational event. And so that has been my two main focuses are to keep it with the original intent of the founders of the organization, that it be a positive event. Its main focus is education, and some people win a prize. And then also to have everything that happens, I look at it, well, if I was in this competition, how would I feel about this? Mm-hmm. And to make every effort to make it something musicians want to come back to, that they're glad they came to. And one of the testimonies of that last year's grand prize winner, this is an incredible fact. If you add up all the number of times each of them had come to Fischoff over the years, before they won the grand prize, there were 22 years of Fischoff experience between them. Wow. Since they were little kids, some of them. They had been here many times. And, that's a testimony to, I think, that we're doing a lot of things right, that they'd want to keep coming back and not want to not come back.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is wonderful.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been seeing as well here is everybody walks away a winner because there's so much to be absorbed and so many new friends.
Right.
And
we try to build that. We try to encourage that. We talk about it to them. They hear about that in advance before they come here, and then they hear the message again when they're here. And, if we could, I'd love to do more social events with everybody. That's one thing that happened at one of the international competitions I was at. They got everybody from all over the world together to just have a dance. It was fun. It was crazy. None of us could understand what each other were saying, But it was really an incredibly positive experience. And this is a much smaller event, and it was never really... Originally, it was designed to just, have this little, for the grand prize winner, a blip, the first blip on the radar screen, and it's turned into something bigger than that. And yet, it still has relatively easy repertoire requirements so that people can be encouraged to enter this competition. It's not Munich, it's not City of London or Portsmouth,
mm-hmm.
where you need 3 recital programs to enter.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows people to have that first experience.
Mm-hmm. What do you see for the future ahead?
I have no idea. I have certain dreams for this event. I wish our prizes could be bigger. I wish the winner could have a really amazing concert tour, including New York. Because I believe our grand prize winners it didn't used to be true, but I think the people who win the grand prize are ready to rock.
Mm-hmm.
And for that matter, people who win the junior division are pretty much ready to rock. But that kind of growth, I think, would be great. I don't see it getting huge, a 1 or 2 week festival.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it will. But then it would change, the entire mission of it would change.
Mm-hmm.
People would have to take a huge chunk of their time out of their life to do this. It's already a challenge for the pre-college kids to take time out from school. It's kind of during exam and jury time. If you're in a conservatory, we don't want to stretch it out too long.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Future
Everything
is the
possible.
future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tom, you're an experienced cellist, chamber musician,
Mm-hmm.
pedagogue. What is your advice for the musicians that are either returning and have been here before or have never been and would like to enter? How can one go about preparing and rehearsing for a competition like Fischoff?
Okay. There's 2 things that are required. I think you have to love music because the level required to get in has become very, very high, even in the junior division. It's very difficult. And the biggest mistake I think groups make is not having a really, really high quality audio and video audition.
Mm-hmm.
Because that can really, when you get to the competition, everybody plays in the same concert hall. And the acoustics are all even. But that's so important now when it's become very difficult to get in. If you put yourself at a disadvantage if you don't do everything you can to have high quality video and especially audio. But it's still easy to prepare for in terms of repertoire. I mean, the junior division only has to enter, I think we still keep it minimum of 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's nothing. 2 movements, not necessarily even from a different piece,
mm-hmm.
To enter. And the truth is you need more than that to really succeed. But the idea is to get those groups and those students to just get going
mm-hmm.
and to be stimulated to enter. And so... and then in the senior division, it's 60 minutes. It's less than a full recital.
Right.
It's not difficult in terms of having enough repertoire. But that goes with the fact that it's also a 2-day event, 3-day event. I mean, we don't have, it'd be ridiculous to ask for 2 or 3 concert programs and then have people come and play a very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. At least in my opinion. Yeah. So we keep it that way, but the cream rises to the top. You also have to get very, very lucky, which is true throughout the music industry. You know, everyone who auditions for orchestras, there's so many good players, and you have to be. Everyone has to play well, and then it's 1 or 2 people get lucky. It depends on who's listening to you. I'm completely convinced you could have 3 different sets of jurors, and you would end with different results. Mm-hmm. Because taste is a huge thing. The other thing I like to tell people, and I really believe it, is that when you enter a competition, you have to agree to just allow the results to be the results. Mm-hmm. It's not a concert where everything would be, everyone would love everyone loves what you're doing anyway maybe, but no one's being made to choose between groups, between musicians. But at a competition, if you enter, you're basically signing a contract that says, I'm entering a competition. There's going to be a jury. The jury is the ones who are allowed to make a decision about who gets lucky and who wins a prize and who doesn't. And it doesn't mean you aren't wonderful if you don't get lucky and have the right jury to listen to you, or the right orchestra committee to listen to you, or whatever it might be.
And what is your advice in terms of, are there any specific rehearsal techniques that you like to use with the groups that you coach?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think for voicing, for instance, I teach a lot of, I do college and pre-college, but to teach a group how to voice a piece, if you take the bows away and have everybody play pizzicato, and it takes away the sustained sounds, it helps them define what voice they want to hear the most. It's sort of a quick way. Singing your part is another quick way to voice something. But learn to voice something. Learn that forte might mean piano for you. I talk about how a pianist has 10 fingers and 2 ears and 1 brain, and they would never have the 4th finger obliterate the melody, and but string quartet players can do that, and orchestra players too.
Yes, that's so true.
And so the job of a conductor, let's say in a good orchestra with a good rehearsal, is to help the voices come out the way the conductor wants to hear it. Well, in a quartet, you have 8 hands, you have 4 sets of ears, you have 4 brains, at least usually, and once in a while there's only 3 brains in the quartet, but I'm just kidding. And then everyone is hearing from a different perspective. You have the violinists, one with the sound right under their ears. You have the cellists with their sound coming out in a different place. One violinist is in front of another one. You have the violist who's sort of turned a little bit different, probably, and they have to learn to have like a remote set of ears. They're listening to themselves, they're listening to the group, and then they have to imagine a set of ears out in the concert hall, listening back, and sending back a signal, and is this sound right or not? And it's very complex when you have 8 ears and 4 brains and 8 hands to really make that work and know if it's working or not. So that's where a coach can come in too. But you eventually learn to do that on your own. But voicing it that way with pizzicato helps kids in particular, I think, hear what voice they want to hear.
That's a great technique. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing with Fischoff. It's such a special experience for everyone. I can feel it. I can see it. And
that's why I keep doing it, too.
Yes.
I feel like it's a good thing in the world, at least in the competition world, anyway.
It is. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's it for today. Tomorrow we'll meet 4 of the judges of this 46th edition of the Fischoff competition. You'll hear about their experience. They're going to give us some insight as to what they're looking for in a group when they're judging, and they'll answer the questions that you guys sent me before I left. Hope to see you there. Get in touch with me to share your thoughts about the Fischoff or about competitions in general. And please share with whomever you think might benefit from or find value in this episode. As always, you can find me at mindoverfinger.com and on both Facebook and Instagram by searching for Mind Over Finger. À bientôt!